even 1 degree different than the way you saw it before you looked at the object, then you've had a successful art experience.
My motivations are really to try to achieve the most I can to my potential and to try to share that potential.
One of the interesting things about Jeff Koons' work is in contemporary art, you'll get a lot of people who don't know that much about it, but they talk about how craft is lost and anyone could make contemporary art. You certainly can't say that about Jeff Koons' work.
Some people object to the fact that Jeff Koons isn't actually fabricating these works himself. They miss the hand of the artist. But the fact of the matter is, since ancient times, work has been conceptual. If you think of a great Renaissance tapestry or a Baroque tapestry, say, designed by Rubens, Rubens would have made a beautiful oil sketch, and then it would have been enlarged by assistants in his studio. And then weavers would have taken a year or two, and maybe a dozen weavers working at a time to reproduce, stitch by stitch, the pattern that the artist had established and which had been blown up by assistants. And that's really no different than how Jeff Koons is working.
It certainly has a kinship to the Andy Warhol factory, where it's collaborative with other artisans in making work. But unlike Warhol's factory, which tended to have a sort of quickness and ease of production, Jeff harkens back almost to the medieval studio, where you have artisans in apprenticeships and in working very, very carefully and very precisely to create objects of incredible craft. Part of craft is the precision of seeing something well crafted, and the other is that it takes a long time to get a work, and he resists that quick production. Each work is a labor of intense labor, and that's important, I think, to the nature of his practice.
This is a painting part of the studio. This is Boy with Pony. That's from 1994, and we're just completing it right now. I've worked on it off and on over the years. That's a triple Elvis, but it's just first coat of the flesh. We've got to go back, make it very realistic. People are mixing paint here, this part of the studio. I'll make printouts of the type of images I want to work with. Then they'll break down the colors of those images, and then they'll tube everything. So it ends up that thousands of colors are mixed and tubed, and they're waiting for the painters to paint the painting. So in this room, the paintings are from different times. Some of them are from today. Down on the end is the newest painting that we're almost finished. Where we see that gray, we'll spray a very reflective silver there. Claude Elvis here from Popeye series, Celebration series Play-Doh. This is a painting that we're just finishing right now within the next 3 days. This will be finished. This is called Peg Leg Bells. These are fake gestures. This will be for 2 large paintings that we're doing where we've put these gestures down that my children have made. And even though they look like they're made just by taking the sponges or big brushes, we're, hand painting and creating all these big gestures with small brushes. So in sculpture, we make models here, different objects we want to work with. All this work is from 2003, the Popeye series. It takes several years for these works to come through the studio. So this lobster's getting ready. It's really at the final stages of getting the prime ready and getting the details in there that will go to paint. But this maybe just has a couple days yet of just being sure that it's clean. From the time that it's starting to go through the foundry to this level, about 2 years. These are all aluminum pieces that are painted, and this eventually be painted to look like this inflatable here. This is an original that we've used for the design. This will hang from rubberized chains, and it hangs on a 10-degree angle, but these ears get mounted on there.
But if you want to go back to the Renaissance, and you want to go back to Warhol's factory, and again, Warhol's factory, we're talking 40-some years now, it's not exactly a new idea, and it's not exactly revolutionary if you're quoting the Renaissance, but why does he have to bring that up?
It's an interesting mix of high-tech and low-tech. That a lot of what Jeff Koons does these days, if you think about his paintings, is appropriate images, reorganize them, and the computer is an important tool in envisioning those images. Yet on the flip side, the number of manual hours that goes into painting them harkens back to the most ancient craft.
Jeff's strength as an artist is that he's an incredible perfectionist. It really has to be perfect. perfect like no other. I really don't know anyone who strives for that level of perfection and manages to achieve it.
This exhibition here on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum of Art has been the most popular, almost by twice, of all the roof garden exhibitions we've had for the last dozen years or so. All three works come from his Celebration series, and the one thing that unifies the Celebration series is the technique. They're stainless steel, they're very shiny, they have a meticulous surface. Each of these works actually took a year or two just to fabricate. Often, although very simple in form and appearance, they represent huge technological obstacles. How to make a perfectly curved surface with no deformation. And by using these very reflective paints on the stainless steel, any imperfection in the casting of the work would show.
You don't get that kind of funhouse mirror effect when you look at it. In fact, you see yourself precisely as you would in a crystal clear, high-quality mirror.
And so technologically, they're very advanced, but the concept often comes from childlike enthusiasms. One work you see behind me, the largest, is called Coloring Book, and it's based on a drawing that his son made in a coloring book. What Koons did was take his child's enthusiastic drawing and then, with the computer, eliminated the outlines of the form, because what he appreciated was his son's willingness to go outside of the boundaries, and that immediate sense of freedom which he saw in his son's approach to art was something that Koons as an artist was striving for himself. The third and most important piece on the roof, the largest, is Balloon Dog, and I think the masterpiece so far of Jeff Koons' career. But it's much more than a child's toy.
There's something very complex about that form, even though we've watched the balloon guy make the form. The way that it all comes together seems to defy its original form as a straight, skinny, narrow balloon.
It sets up so many associations with the history of art, from the ancient god Anubis to the Trojan horse, yet every aspect of Balloon Dog, in fact, has been sexualized, whether it's his erect arms and legs and how they meet his torso, his nose, and what Koons is very conscious of is the sexuality of sight.
Art creates kind of a chemical reaction within the body. I mean, it's something that you feel an intensity to. You feel an intellectual intensity. You feel physical intensity. So an artist, I think, becomes very dependent on that sensation, that feeling of what it feels like to be alive and what this body can feel like. I'm very excited about the upcoming exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art. I've always had a great collector base in Chicago.
This is a very personal exhibition for the MCA Chicago in that we presented Jeff Koons' first solo museum show in 1988, and now, exactly 20 years later, we are again collaborating with Jeff Koons on a magnificent exhibition.
I want to thank the MCA. I've enjoyed every moment of working on this exhibition, especially installing the show.
I want to thank Jeff Koons, first of all, for his amazing effort. You will see when we go into the galleries the flows of his idea and of his work, really creating a weave, a pattern, as he said, of an amazing narrative. This is a very symbolic opening of the exhibition, because when you enter and you see all this work together, your hearts open up.
There is not a moment where humankind didn't produce art. There is not. Maybe there's been a period where humankind destroys certain kind of art, but producing other art. There's never been a moment where you can say, for these 50 years, no art was produced.
The amazing thing about art is it can empower, and it has an ability to constantly let people know that everything about them is perfect. And art's this amazing vehicle that really shows there can be no judgment. Recently, I participated in the Macy's Day Parade, and I made a large inflatable of my rabbit. It was participating in the parade with Shrek and Dora the Explorer, and so there's a sense of, reaching the mass. 35 million people saw it on television, but the sensation of knowing that somebody can go into a museum and they can experience one of your works, and that if you really believe that they opened themselves up, that they felt a sense of their own potential, that's connecting with a mass in a way, because connecting to the mass is just that one viewer. I didn't anticipate just how vast art could be, and really the type of role it could play in my life, and the enjoyment and fulfillment and interest that it could generate. So that's really the success. If you want to participate, as an artist, you make your work, but there's also all these other vehicles that help you participate. So you just have to find really kind of that right balancing point. And so every day when I wake up, I think about this day and, what I want to do with my art.
Which artists will hold up for time is partly a function of future generations' judgments and not our own. And it's always hard to see outside your time.
But as far as the next person to come along after myself, I'm sure it's just it's a young artist that really wants to participate and wants to connect.
Jeff Koons is the artist who's not afraid to think of the materials of the everyday as having some transcendent quality, and reaching on one level to a basketball or an image of Louis XIV, and to see them all part of a continuum of the images of our time and that we work with, but that the key thing is that there has to be some kind of alchemy of transformation from the everyday to greater aspirations. And that's at the core, I think, of Jeff's work.
Art's been a wonderful vehicle within my life. It's brought transcendence. And so I hope that when somebody views a work of art, that they realize that the art is really inside them. It's never in the object. It's never in the image that they're viewing. The art happens within them. It's always about